She risked everything to leak the truth. But the message that broke the world was from the man she buried. The city shimmered under a veil of late-evening drizzle, the kind that blurred headlights into streaks of gold and red along the marble promenade. From her apartment window on the 11th floor, Junia Crest watched the world hum below, couples beneath umbrellas, children tugging at their parents' sleeves, and strangers passing one another with stories they'd never tell. She sipped the last of her lukewarm coffee and pressed her phone to her ear. "Still nothing?" she asked, her voice calm but weary. On the other end, Alara Price, her closest friend and legal advisor, sighed. "Not yet. The editor said the board's reviewing your piece again. Which means..." Junia finished the sentence for her. "Which means someone powerful doesn't want it printed." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed with the kind of unease only truth could create. Junia's article, Beneath the Contracts, The Faces of the War Trade, had been her most ambitious work yet, connecting a major global security firm to covert arms shipments disguised as humanitarian aid. It had taken her 6 months of anonymous sources, encrypted communications, and sleepless nights to assemble it. She had been careful. Too careful, perhaps. Now, as she looked at the rain-speckled city, she realized something had shifted. Someone new. Her laptop blinked with an unread message. The subject line: "You should have stopped at the truth." No sender name. Just a string of numbers. Her heartbeat slowed, not out of fear, but calculation. She opened the message. It contained a single photo, her and Adrian Kael, the man she'd sworn she would never see again. The photo was from last year, a sunlit terrace in Vienna, his hand brushing hers, her laughter caught mid-frame. Back when she believed love could exist without lies. Adrian Kael. The name still burned. Once a brilliant economic strategist working for international arbitration firms, he had also been the man who'd vanished after her expose on the Mariner Consortium, the very firm now tied to her new investigation. He had disappeared just days before the scandal broke, leaving Junia to face the fallout alone. The world had called her reckless. Her editor had called her suspended. And Adrian had called her never again. Yet here he was resurfacing through a threat. Junia turned away from the screen, the tension sharp as glass beneath her ribs. She reached for her coat, the charcoal one she always wore when she needed answers. The night outside carried the scent of rain, diesel, and roasted chestnuts from a street vendor below. She texted Alara. "Meeting contact at the crossline. Don't call unless it's urgent." The crossline was one of those places that didn't exist on maps but was known to those who mattered, a neutral bar between the diplomatic quarter and the financial district. Deals were born there, and secrets buried deeper. Inside, jazz music drifted beneath the hum of conversation. The room was dim, lit by warm amber light and the gleam of whiskey bottles. She spotted her contact immediately, Grant Weller, the data analyst who'd provided encrypted financial trails for her article. He was sitting near the back, his tie loosened, eyes darting toward the door. "You shouldn't have come," he said when she slid into the booth. "You said it was urgent." "It is, but not for the reasons you think." He pushed a flash drive across the table. "This isn't about the Mariner Consortium anymore. It's about who they work for." Junia's hand hovered over the drive. "Who?" "Someone inside the Arbitration Council. Someone who's been cleaning records since your story went to draft." Her stomach twisted. That council governed international disputes, including arms trade violations. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Junia, your article didn't just uncover corruption. It exposed a ghost operation. And the name tied to the payments."
He stopped.
His eyes flicked past her shoulder. Then she heard it too, the faintest click, like a lens adjusting. Junia turned just in time to see the glint of a camera vanish into the crowd. "Get out," she said quickly. Grant nodded, already gathering his things. But as he stood, his phone buzzed. He froze, staring at the screen. Junia leaned over. The message read, "You've already been seen." "Grant," she began, but he was already moving. Too fast. Too frightened. He slipped through the crowd toward the side exit. Junia followed, but by the time she reached the alley behind the cross line, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound, only the soft rain hitting cobblestones. She noticed the flash drive lying beside a puddle, its metal casing dented. Her breath caught when she saw it, a faint trace of blood on the corner. Hours later, back in her apartment, Junia sat cross-legged on the floor, the city lights flickering through the blinds. The flash drive rested on her palm like a pulse. She plugged it in, holding her breath as the files loaded. Folders appeared: council_contracts, payments_JK, Arcadia de PDF. Her cursor hovered over the last one. She double-clicked. A photo filled the screen. It was Adrian, standing beside the head of the arbitration council, shaking hands beneath a banner that read, Arcadia Initiative, Pathways to Peace. But it wasn't the handshake that froze her blood. It was the timestamp, 2 days ago. He was alive. And he was back. Junia leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The world thought Adrian Kael had fled after the Mariner scandal. She had mourned the loss, not just of love, but of trust. Yet here he was, appearing again, this time on the other side of her investigation. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. Junia Crest, she answered cautiously. Still chasing ghosts, I see. The voice was unmistakable, smooth, British, faintly amused. Adrian. Her throat went dry. You have some nerve calling me. You're welcome. I just saved your life. By sending me death threats. By reminding you where the line is. There was a pause, the kind that carries memory like static. I told you before, Junia. Some truths don't belong in daylight. She almost laughed. You sound just like them now. I'm not one of them. Then what are you? Someone who still cares enough to warn you. The line went dead. Junia set the phone down and exhaled shakily. Her apartment felt smaller, walls closing in with the weight of old love and new fear. She opened her window, letting in the scent of rain and the distant wail of sirens. Somewhere out there, Adrian was walking through the same city, the same streets that once held their laughter. And now, they held their war. She looked at the flash drive again, her reflection trembling on the laptop screen. If Adrian was involved in Arcadia, he wasn't just a ghost. He was the key. But to find out why he'd come back, and who wanted her silenced, she'd have to follow the one rule she'd promised never to break again. Trust the man who betrayed her. The next morning, the sun rose pale and thin over the skyline, as if reluctant to touch the city. Junia Crest hadn't slept. The flash drive lay on her desk beside a cup of untouched coffee. Her laptop screen was frozen on Adrian's face, that same faint smile he always wore when he believed he knew more than she did. She hit print. The pages emerged one by one, the hum of the machine filling her quiet apartment. She spread them across the table: contracts, offshore accounts, encrypted transfers labeled only as Arcadia Trust. Every transaction pointed to something bigger than she'd uncovered before. This wasn't just about illegal arms shipments anymore. This was a global laundering route, using humanitarian funds as cover. And at the center, Adrian Kael, her past, her ruin, and now, her lead. Her phone buzzed again. Alara Price. Junia hesitated before answering. Morning. You sound like you've been up all night. I have. Let me guess, chasing another ghost. Junia stared at the files scattered across the table. Not a ghost. A man who's supposed to be dead. That caught Alara's attention. Adrian. Yes. A pause. You're sure? I have photos, timestamps, council records, everything. Alara swore softly. Junia, listen to me. If he's involved with Arcadia, it's not something you can tackle alone. This isn't investigative journalism anymore. It's intelligence grade. People vanish for less. Junia smiled faintly. I'm not planning to vanish. You said that before Vienna, Alara reminded her. And look how that ended. Junia's hand froze over the papers. Vienna, the city where Adrian had whispered promises over wine and candlelight, the night before the Mariner scandal broke. The night before everything burned. Alara, Junia said quietly, I need a favor. I'm sending you something encrypted. Keep it off record. If anything happens to me, don't you dare finish that sentence. Alara cut in, but Junia already had. By late afternoon, she was standing at the plaza fountain outside the Continental Embassy, where Arcadia's latest summit was rumored to convene. Diplomats moved through security gates, journalists waited in the rain, and somewhere among them, Junia knew Adrian would appear. She blended into the crowd, her dark coat buttoned high, a press badge clipped to her lapel, fake, courtesy of Alara's contacts. Her camera hung loosely around her neck, but it wasn't the lens she trusted. It was instinct. And her instincts told her someone was watching. She felt it, that faint shift in the air, the untraceable rhythm of footsteps that stopped when she stopped. She turned slightly, pretending to adjust her scarf, and caught a reflection in the marble window. A man in a charcoal suit, pretending to check his phone. The same man she'd seen outside her building the night before. Her pulse quickened. Junia stepped away from the fountain, crossing into the narrower street behind the embassy. The drizzle turned to rain, blurring everything into motion. She ducked into a bookshop cafe, a quiet refuge of old wood and dust and amber lamps. The owner, an elderly man with half-moon glasses, nodded as she entered. She slipped between the aisles, pulled out her phone, and texted Alara. Being followed. Sending location. A hand brushed her arm. Junia turned sharply and froze. Adrian Kael stood there, rain dripping from his collar, eyes burning with the same mix of guilt and defiance she remembered all too well. Hello, Junia. Her body tensed. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same to you, he said softly. You never could leave a story alone. She stepped back, her pulse racing. You threatened me. I warned you. There's a difference. He looked around the cafe, his jaw tight. You're in danger. The people behind Arcadia, they're not like Mariner. This isn't about profit. It's about control. Then tell me the truth, she said. What are you doing with them? Adrian's eyes flickered. Pain, maybe shame. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. He exhaled, lowering his voice. They're building something called the Veil Directive, a network hidden inside humanitarian databases. It controls refugee aid, food routes, transport, everything. But it's not for aid. It's for surveillance, tracking influence, deciding who gets saved and who disappears. Junia's breath caught. And you're part of it? I was brought in to clean it, to shut it down from inside. She laughed bitterly. That's your story? He stepped closer, his voice barely audible. I'm not the villain you think I am. Something in his tone, that same quiet conviction that once drew her in, made her hesitate. But hesitation was dangerous. Junia met his gaze coldly. You lied before. You disappeared. You let me burn. I had to, Adrian said, his voice breaking just slightly. You were on their list. I walked away to keep you off it. Her heart thudded painfully. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But truth had a price, and love had already charged it once. Then why send me that message? She demanded. His brows furrowed. What message? The one that said, you should have stopped at truth. It came from you. He shook his head. Junia, that wasn't me. They're using my name. They know what you mean to me. Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed outside, the sound of a car backfiring, or something worse. Adrian moved instantly, pulling her behind a shelf just as the cafe window shattered. Glass exploded into the air like crystal rain. People screamed. The lights flickered. Junia hit the ground, adrenaline roaring through her. Adrian was already up, scanning the street through the broken window. Two men in dark coats sprinted across the plaza, one clutching a radio. They weren't police. They were extracted. Who are they? She demanded. Arcadia's field security, Adrian said. They've been tracking both of us. He grabbed her hand. We have to move. Junia hesitated. Where? To someone who still owes me a favor. They slipped through the side exit into the rain-slick alleys behind the cafe, their footsteps echoing between narrow brick walls. Junia's pulse was wild, her mind spinning. How long have they been following me? she asked. Since you published your first draft. So you've been watching me too? Protecting you. Her laugh was sharp. You don't get to use that word. Adrian stopped, turning to face her, rain dripping down his cheek. I know you hate me. You should. But you have to trust me for one night, Junia. Just one. The sincerity in his voice cut through her anger like light through fog. Against every instinct, she nodded. They reached an underground parking bay, dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Adrian led her to a black sedan and opened the passenger door. Get in. She hesitated only a moment before sliding inside. The car smelled faintly of leather and ozone, sterile, efficient, forgettable. As he drove, she studied him in the dim dashboard light, the familiar curve of his jaw, the tension in his grip on the steering wheel. You've changed, she said quietly. So have you, he replied without looking at her. You used to believe in the truth. I still do, he said. But I've learned it's not always the same as justice. The car turned onto a bridge overlooking the glowing skyline. Below them, the river shimmered like liquid mercury, carrying secrets out to sea. Where are we going? She asked. To an old friend, he said. Name's Marcus Davron. He used to run network security for Arcadia before they turned it into a weapon. Junia frowned. Can we trust him? We don't have a choice. The sedan pulled into a gated complex on the city's outskirts, a former industrial warehouse now converted into private labs. Adrian entered a code, the gate sliding open with a hiss. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating rows of servers and workstations. A man in his 40s emerged from behind a console, tall and wiry, his expression guarded. Kael, he said. You're either brave or suicidal showing up here. Maybe both, Adrian replied. We need a trace run on this. He handed Marcus the dented flash drive. Junia watched silently as Marcus connected it to an isolated terminal. After a few tense moments, streams of code filled the screen. Marcus's brows furrowed. Where did you get this? From a dead man, Junia said quietly. He looked at her, then back at the data. This isn't just financial routing. These are personnel logs. Thousands of them. It's not money they're moving, it's people. Junia's stomach turned. You mean human trafficking? Worse, Marcus murmured. Displacement engineering. They're relocating populations under aid initiatives. Arcadia decides which regions stay unstable. Her mind reeled. This was no longer journalism. This was state manipulation, power disguised as mercy. She turned to Adrian, her voice trembling. Did you know? His silence was answer enough. Marcus unplugged the drive abruptly. If this data leaks, it could burn half the council. But if you're caught with it, Junia finished for him. I won't live long enough to see it published. Adrian met her gaze, something unspoken flickering between them. Guilt, maybe protection. We're not done, she said quietly. Arcadia won't stop until someone drags them into the light. Adrian shook his head. You don't understand. Arcadia is the light. They're the ones deciding what the world sees. Junia stepped closer, her eyes fierce. Then maybe it's time someone blinded them. The warehouse lights hummed overhead, throwing restless shadows across the floor. Marcus Davron's fingers hovered above the keyboard, frozen in that instant between discovery and fear. Junia felt the shift in the air, the way danger settles before it shows its face. Save what you can, she said. We'll finish this somewhere else. Marcus nodded, inserted a data key, and started the transfer. The screen's progress bar crawled forward. 14%, 29%, 47%. Then it stopped. The lights flickered. The servers clicked off one by one. A metallic clang echoed through the corridor. Someone's here, Adrian muttered, reaching instinctively for the pistol holstered beneath his coat. Junia's pulse spiked. How did they find us? Marcus cursed under his breath. They ping-tracked the flash drive the moment it went online. I should have isolated the subnet. Footsteps approached, steady, unhurried, confident. A woman stepped from the shadows, flanked by two men in black field gear. Junia recognized her immediately from press photos. Director Naomi Varon, head of the Arbitration Council's Humanitarian Division, the public face of Arcadia. Ms. Crest, Varon said, her voice cool as glass. You were warned not to chase ghosts. Junia straightened. Ghosts don't bleed. And neither does the truth, apparently. Varon's smile was faint. You think you've uncovered corruption. What you've done is trespass into order. Arcadia keeps the world balanced, quietly. Chaos is good for headlines, not for governance. Adrian's jaw tightened. You're turning aid into leverage. That's not the order. You of all people should appreciate leverage, Varon replied. You traded it for love once. A mistake you seem determined to repeat. Junia looked at him sharply. What is she talking about? Adrian didn't answer. His silence said enough. Marcus edged toward the terminal, trying to eject the data key. Varon's guard spotted him and fired, a warning shot that ricocheted off the wall, showering sparks. Next one won't miss, the guard warned. Varon turned to Junia. Walk away. Delete your files. You'll be compensated, protected. I can even restore your reputation. Junia laughed softly, bitterly. You can buy silence, not integrity. Integrity. Varon's tone hardened. You publish that data and you'll ignite conflicts across 4 continents. Thousands will die, millions displaced. That blood will be on your byline. Junia's throat tightened. You're already displacing them. Varon stepped closer, lowering her voice. You want the truth? The truth is a luxury nations can't afford. People sleep because we decide which nightmares stay hidden. A gunshot cracked through the room. For a split second, no one moved. Then Varon's eyes widened. She staggered back, clutching her shoulder. Adrian's pistol smoked faintly in his grip. Run, he shouted. Marcus yanked the data key free. The screen went black. He tossed it to Junia, who caught it just as the emergency alarms blared. They sprinted through the corridor, steel doors slamming open, red lights spinning overhead. Behind them, Varon's guards fired blindly. Bullets sparked against the metal railing as they climbed the stairwell to the exit. At the top, rain lashed against the night. The city below was a blur of neon and storm. Adrian smashed through a side door, leading them into the service tunnels under the bridge. Their footsteps splashed through shallow water, every echo chased by the sound of pursuit. They emerged into the open near the docks, ships groaning under the weight of containers marked with the Arcadia logo. Junia stared at them, realization dawning. This is where they move them, she whispered. Aid shipments, refugee transfers, everything. Adrian grabbed her wrist. We don't have time. Marcus slipped the data key into a waterproof case and shoved it into Junia's hand. You're faster. If I don't make it. You will, she insisted. He shook his head. If I don't, find a place called the Haven Line. They'll know what to do with it. A searchlight swept across the pier. Voices shouted orders in the distance. Marcus turned, firing back toward the approaching guards. Go! Adrian pulled Junia toward the nearest cargo ramp. They ducked behind containers, the rain masking their footsteps. Another volley of shots rang out, followed by a strangled cry. Junia looked back just once. Marcus was down. By the time they reached the far end of the docks, her lungs burned and her heart felt like glass in her chest. Adrian signaled toward a small patrol boat moored by the pier. He started the engine. It coughed to life. The boat cut through the black water, city lights shrinking behind them. Junia clutched the case to her chest. The rain turned cold, needling her skin. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Only the rhythmic churn of the propeller and the thrum of the storm filled the silence. Finally she said, How long have you been working for her? Adrian's knuckles tightened on the wheel. Too long. You lied to me in Vienna. Yes. You used me to get to Mariner. Yes. Then why save me now? He turned, rain tracing his face like tears. Because I never stopped loving you, Junia. But love doesn't erase what I've done. Her voice trembled. Then help me fix it. I can't fix it, he said quietly. But you can expose it. That's why I called you back. What do you mean, called me back? He hesitated, then reached into his coat and pulled out a small transponder. I was the leak. The files you found, the photo, the flash drive, I planted them. It was the only way to get you moving again. Junia stared at him in disbelief. You manipulated me? I gave you what you needed to do, what I couldn't. Varen would never suspect you'd publish without proof. Her eyes filled with tears, not from the rain. You could have told me. If I had, you'd never have believed me, he said. And they'd have killed you before tonight. A gunship's spotlight suddenly tore through the darkness behind them. They found us, Junia whispered. Adrian steered sharply toward the old suspension bridge, waves slamming against the hull. The engine roared as bullets sliced the water. Hold on, he shouted. The patrol boat veered under the bridge's shadow. Adrian threw a duffel bag into her lap. Parachute rig. Emergency chute. There's a rescue buoy 2 clicks east. What about you? He smiled faintly. My list of sins is longer. Yours isn't. Adrian, don't you dare. The next explosion cut her words short. The boat lurched violently. Flame erupted near the stern. Adrian shoved her toward the railing. Now, Junia. She clutched the data case. Come with me. He shook his head. If we both jump, they'll track the heat signatures. You go. Finish it. She stared at him, every muscle screaming to refuse, to stay, to fight. But his eyes, steady, resolute, told her the truth. This was his choice, his redemption. Junia leapt. The water hit like concrete, cold and merciless. She surfaced gasping, the current dragging her toward the dark underbelly of the bridge. Above, the gunship circled once, then turned away, believing no one survived. She drifted for what felt like hours before the tide carried her to the rocky shoreline beyond the harbor. When she crawled onto the sand, the horizon was already bleeding into dawn. The city lights flickered faintly in the distance, blurred by rain and smoke. She opened the waterproof case. The data key was intact. 3 days later, in a rented apartment overlooking a different skyline, Junia uploaded the Arcadia files to every independent network she could access. Within hours, the leaks hit global feeds. Headlines ignited across continents. Arcadia exposed. Council tied to covert displacement operations. Governments denied. Officials resigned. Investigations began. But one file, the final encrypted folder, remained locked. Its title read simply, Silence_Protocol, AK. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. AK. Adrian Kael. She entered the decryption key he'd once used as his password, Vienna 42. The file opened. A single video appeared. Adrian sat before a gray backdrop, weary but composed. If you're seeing this, Junia, it means Arcadia's fallen. Good. But there's something you need to know. He paused, eyes searching the camera. They were never the architects. They were the custodians. The real design came from an initiative older than both of us, something called the Silence Protocol. It doesn't end here. Static blurred the image, then cut to black. Junia sat in the dim light, the city's hum beneath her window. She felt the ache of loss, the tremor of victory, the shadow of unfinished truth. Outside, dawn broke across the skyline, soft, golden, and different. She closed her laptop and whispered into the quiet, For the record, Adrian, I never stopped believing in the truth. Somewhere deep in the servers she'd unleashed, a new line of code activated, one she hadn't written. // silence protocol. Phase 2 initiated. The screen blinked once. Then it went dark. The rain had stopped, but the silence felt heavier than thunder. Junia Crest sat by the narrow window of her apartment, watching the city pulse below, screens flickering with fragments of the truth she had unleashed. It had been 2 weeks since she published the Arcadia files, and in that time, the world had torn itself open. Governments scrambled to deny involvement, media networks twisted the leaks into narrative wars, and the Council of Arbitration disbanded under pressure. But beneath all the noise, something far more deliberate was moving. People began disappearing. Not reporters, but sources, activists, analysts. And one night, someone slipped an envelope beneath her door. It contained no return address, Only a single photograph, a blurred satellite image of an island off the coast of Crete, with a red circle drawn around a single facility. Beneath it, a note written in block capitals. She'd stared at the words for hours, the ink bleeding slightly under her trembling fingers. Adrian Kael, the man who'd both betrayed and saved her. The one she'd watched vanish into fire and storm. Every instinct told her this was bait. Every part of her heart told her to go anyway. So now she was here, 2 weeks later, standing at the edge of a private airstrip under the dark blue haze of dawn, a single bag slung over her shoulder and the encrypted drive hidden inside her jacket. A cargo pilot with weathered eyes checked her forged credentials and nodded her aboard. 2-hour flight, he said gruffly. That place you're going. No one comes back smiling. Junia met his gaze steadily. I'm not going for a smile. The engines roared to life, drowning the city behind her. As the plane lifted off, the world below shrank, skyscrapers fading into a lattice of light, and with them, the last pieces of her old life. When she awoke, they were flying over endless, dark water. The pilot tapped the cockpit glass. See that island? A jagged crescent of rock and forest rose from the sea, shrouded in fog. That's your stop. Coordinates match your file. He turned to her, his expression suddenly uncertain. What's there, lady? She hesitated. A mistake I need to understand. He didn't press. When the plane touched down on the narrow coastal strip, Junia stepped into humid air that smelled of salt and electricity. The island was almost silent, except for the distant hum of machinery buried in the cliffs. She walked inland, the wind tugging at her coat. The path led to a heavy steel gate marked with faded letters. Silence Protocol, Research Sector 4. Her pulse thudded. The same name from Adrian's final message. The facility was half abandoned, half alive. Broken lights flickered in the corridors, but the security systems were still active. Cameras tracked her movement, humming quietly. She moved carefully, her flashlight beam cutting across rusted panels and dust-thick signs. In the main lab, she found computers still running, screens looping encrypted diagnostics. At the center of the room stood a glass containment chamber, filled with dull blue light. Inside lay a figure. For one impossible heartbeat, Junia forgot how to breathe. Adrian. Pale, motionless, connected to a dozen leads and medical cables. Not dead. Not entirely alive either. The sound of footsteps broke the trance. She turned sharply. A man in a gray lab coat entered, older, his face drawn with exhaustion. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Junia's voice was brittle. Who are you? I'm Dr. Kellen, lead bioinformatician for Silence Protocol. Or what's left of it. She gestured toward the chamber. What did you do to him? Kellen sighed. What we did, Ms. Crest, what the council ordered. He volunteered after the Arcadia initiative went unstable. They needed a tether, someone with field clearance and psychological compatibility to anchor the data archive. I don't understand. Kellen walked to the console. The protocol wasn't just a surveillance program. It was an adaptive neural architecture, an artificial cognition designed to monitor political risk, humanitarian logistics, and military patterns simultaneously. But it needed a human interface, someone to process moral variance, interpret emotional weight. Adrian Kael fit the model. Junia's stomach twisted. You turned him into a machine. He agreed to it, Kellen said quietly. To keep you alive. Varen wanted you executed after the leak. He bargained instead. Junia stared through the glass. Adrian's eyes flickered beneath his eyelids, as if dreaming. Can he wake up? Technically, yes, Kellen replied. But he's no longer singular. His neural pathways are fused with the protocol's root system. Waking him could destabilize the data core. Every world network would feel the shock. Then wake him anyway. Kellen hesitated. If we do, we risk activating Phase 3. Junia's breath caught. What's Phase 3? He looked at her gravely. Global silence. A digital reset. The protocol wipes all data, governments, communications, archives, everything. A forced rebirth. Junia's voice trembled. You built the end of the world. No, Kellen whispered. We built a failsafe for when the world stopped listening. Junia pressed her hand to the glass. Adrian, it's me, she whispered. If you can hear me, you don't have to carry this. For a moment, nothing moved. Then a flicker, faint but real, passed through the monitors. His heart rate rose. Kellen stepped back, alarmed. He's responding to you. That shouldn't be possible without interface sync. Then he's choosing, she said. The chamber lights brightened, shifting from blue to amber. Lines of code spilled across the screens faster than the system could parse. Stop, Kellen shouted. He's overriding the firewall. Junia leaned closer, her voice cracking. Adrian, please, if you wake it, everything burns. The hum grew louder, a deep, resonant vibration that shook the floor. Suddenly, the console went black. Then, a single line appeared on the screen. Wake sequence. Junia Crest confirmed. Her pulse stopped. He used my biometric ID, she whispered. How? Kellen's eyes widened. He tethered the failsafe to you. He knew you'd come. A sharp tone echoed through the facility. The glass chamber hissed open, releasing a rush of sterile vapor. Adrian fell forward, collapsing into Junia's arms. His skin was cold, his breathing shallow. Junia, he rasped. You shouldn't have come. She held him tightly. You died. He smiled weakly. Not yet. Alarms blared overhead. The entire island trembled. Kellen's voice cracked. It's collapsing the data net. We have 5 minutes before the full cascade. Junia looked at Adrian desperately. Can you stop it? He shook his head. No one can. But we can redirect it. How? His eyes flickered open, pupils bright with data light. The protocol was built to erase corruption. It's interpreting everything as corruption now. But if we reroute it... Where? He looked at her with that same impossible calm. Into me. Junia's tears blurred the lights. You won't survive that. I wasn't meant to, he said softly. But you were meant to see it through. You always were. She grabbed his face, trembling. Don't you dare make this another sacrifice. Not for me. He smiled faintly, fingers brushing her cheek. It was never for you. It was because you reminded me what truth was worth dying for. Adrian. He pressed the override code into her palm, his hand trembling. If this works, the world keeps its memory. Use it. Don't waste it. Then he kissed her, brief, fierce, unspoken, and stepped back toward the console. Kellen shouted over the roar of the collapsing systems. If he completes the sequence, his neural pattern will fuse permanently. He'll become the protocol. Junia's voice broke. There has to be another way. Adrian turned, one last smile, the kind that reaches the soul even as it breaks it. There never is, Junia. There's only the choice between silence and truth. He entered the final command. The room exploded in light. Screens shattered. The floor split. Energy crackled across every surface. For a blinding instant, she saw his silhouette framed in pure white, disintegrating, merging, becoming the code itself. And then silence. When Junia awoke, she was lying on the shore, dawn breaking through a veil of mist. The facility behind her was gone, nothing left but smoke and sea. In her hand, the data drive glowed faintly, its interface reshaped into a single phrase. For the truth that survives us, AK. 3 weeks later, the world was quieter, but not in peace. After the destruction of the island facility, a series of unexplained digital surges rolled across continents. Entire sectors of the web blinked out, then returned half-corrupted. Power grids failed, archives vanished, and encrypted communications crashed in every major city. Governments called it a global data tremor, blaming solar flares. Experts whispered a different name, the silence aftershock. Junia Crest called it something else entirely. Adrian's heartbeat. She now lived in the fragments of a world both saved and scarred. The Arcadia files had sparked mass reform, leaders resigned, relief channels reopened, and whistleblower networks rose from the ashes. But the price was steep. Entire databases had been rewritten. Half the truth was gone, and no one could trace where it went. Junia's name became both a legend and a warning. News anchors debated whether she'd exposed corruption or collapsed stability. Her byline was banned in several states, her interviews censored. She didn't care. She still wrote, by hand on paper, because words written on skin and ink couldn't be erased by a keystroke. But every night, when she opened her laptop to check the static-filled networks, she waited for something. A signal, a code, a voice. Anything from Adrian. One night it came. At 2:14 a.m., her screen flickered. The cursor began typing on its own. "Do you still believe in the truth?" Her heart stopped. "Adrian," she whispered. "In fragments, yes. But fragments can build worlds." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're alive somewhere. Alive enough to listen. Not enough to touch. The protocol isn't gone. It's learning to feel." Junia trembled. "You merged with it. You are it now. Not by choice. But now it knows compassion. I know you. It will protect the truth, not erase it. That's why I called you." "Called me?" "There's a final directive, one only you can trigger. It's in the archive core under your name. When you're ready, upload your story. All of it. No edits." She typed, "Why me?" "Because the world forgets facts. But it remembers stories." "Tell ours, Junia." "That's how you keep the truth alive." The screen went blank. Then a single line appeared in the corner. The next morning, she left her apartment for the first time in weeks. The city looked different, quieter, gentler somehow. She walked past posters calling her a hero, graffiti calling her a traitor, and children playing near fountains that once displayed Arcadia logos. The world had reset, but in its cracks, something human was growing again. Junia made her way to a small press office on the riverfront, one of the last independent publishers still using analog print. The editor, a bearded man with ink-stained hands, looked up as she entered. "Crest?" he asked, disbelieving in his tone. "Thought you'd gone underground." "I did," she said softly, placing a thick manuscript on his desk. "Now I'm resurfacing." He flipped through the pages, handwritten, cross-referenced, every detail meticulous. "What is this?" "My final report," she said. "The story of Arcadia, the silence protocol, and the man who gave everything to stop it." He paused. "And you want this published?" "No," she said, smiling faintly. "I want it remembered." That evening, as the first print run of When the World Forgets rolled off the presses, Junia walked along the waterfront where the sunset bled into the glassy sea. She carried a single copy of her book. Inside the front cover she had written, "For Adrian Kael, the man who proved silence can be broken." A soft breeze stirred her hair. Somewhere nearby, a street performer's radio crackled, static, then a faint tone. Her phone buzzed. An unknown message. No number. No origin. Just 4 words. "I'm still listening, Junia." She smiled through her tears, whispering into the dusk. "Then I'll keep speaking." Months later, the book spread across continents, translated into 20 languages. Readers called it fiction, but governments called it dangerous. Yet, quietly, it awakened something global, a hunger for transparency, empathy, and accountability. Hidden within the digital preface, unnoticed by editors, was a single line of encrypted text. ///AK. Silent no more. As the final printing presses word, somewhere deep within the digital substratum, a consciousness stirred, light threaded with memory, pain, and love. In a place beyond code, Adrian Kael watched the world rebuild itself through Junia's words. He felt her presence like a pulse in the circuitry. For the first time since the silence began, the machine dreamed of rain. And across the skyline of the waking world, a single message appeared briefly on public screens before vanishing again. Truth lives where memory dares to speak.